everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Kids with Doctors Brooke and Lynn. I'm Dr. Brooke.
And I'm Dr. Lynn.
Thank you so much for joining us here again today, ladies.
Welcome. Well, at Life After Kids, it's all about the mom. It's all about you. But today we are talking about a topic regarding our kids because at the end of the day, there are just some common things that come up that will make our children unhappy, and we can't be happy and healthy unless our children are.
That's right.
And we're talking about what to do if your child gets to college, or maybe they join the army, or they go to take a job or a gap year, but they're not happy where they end up after they leave your home, and what to do. Yeah.
Oh, this is a big and tough topic.
Well, you have a personal story for this.
I do have a personal story, but this is the thing. I think we talk about this so much in our community because even though our kids are older, if you never stop mothering, you never stop worrying. Newsflash, in case you didn't know, this hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, the stress is different and sometimes bigger.
I would so much rather deal with a struggle or an obstacle than have it be my child deal with it. I mean, right? I mean, I think that's almost like a mom tattoo. Like, it's a non-negotiable. Like, it's so much harder to watch your child struggle and figure something out, especially when they're older and you know that you can't rush in. When they were little, you could teach them, and that was your job as a mom, to guide them and show them where maybe they possibly weren't wrong, ask them questions.
Right.
But as a child, I mean, you can still do that. You can still break it down and debrief it, but you cannot fix it for them. They have to fix it.
It's so hard. Yeah. And in particular, it's the unhappiness thing. Because for me, my prayer has always been for my kids, aside from them, being closely connected and being good friends. And I mean, there are different things I pray, but one of the biggest things that I hope for my kids is that they'll be happy in life above anything else, that any career they're going to choose, or happy and healthy. And so if your child is unhappy where they are,
it's excruciating.
And that could be in their job. That could be, we're talking specifically through the lens of unhappiness at school, but we could branch this out, and it could be job, it could be a relationship, it could be the career where they're living. There are so many things, and it is, as a mother, crushing to see your child unhappy.
But we're all going to go through it because life is a series of ups and downs. You know that for yourself. It's got to be that way for your children. And in fact, if you thought about it and your child only had good times, they're going to probably come along and hit a rough patch and collapse because they have no muscle in that arena built up. So the struggles that do happen, we know this rationally, that they are going to build character, and they're a part of your child's story. Maybe they'll look back and think that was a pivotal moment for them because something good came out of that. I mean, it always does. The most horrendous problems, there's always something, there's always a silver lining that you can choose to look at. But when it comes to your kid, we're going to talk about, as a mom, how you can navigate that, because again, we're talking about you.
Right. How you navigate it for yourself, but also I think some tips to help your child navigate it too. But I think first and foremost, before I go into the story of what I've dealt with, to your point, it's okay to let your kid struggle a little bit. If you don't know that yet, that's probably one of the most important life lessons that you're going to give them. And so even as adults or young adults or college students, whatever it is, if you're constantly trying to put out the fires for them, I hate to say this, but you're not doing them any service doing that.
No, and that usually comes from a mom who, again, could
be gentle.
I know. I love you. It's me. We're the same. But if you're finding yourself needing to stay in that and be in that business of your child who has to figure those things out on your own, it's probably a case of control, needing to let go of the reins a little. And then also maybe you need to just take some of that energy and focus and put it into you and your goals and your desires and your purpose. Because it could be a case of you're having trouble letting go of that purpose that you've fulfilled for them, which was that everyday mothering. So
right, because at this point we can't live our child's life for them. but we can live our own lives for us.
Right. And it can be a symptom. So if you find yourself into that, like I said, up in their business too much,
Yeah.
then it's possibly a
It's
symptom that you need to take that energy and pour that into yourself.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. So
tell us the story.
In this specific conversation I think we're going to have is about a child that's at college and unhappy, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess it could apply to anything, but for me, I have a son. I have multiple sons, but one in college who was not happy where they chose to go. And that was
When did he realize that first?
I think that he had concerns in the fall, shortly after he got there. We started having conversations, and actually I think we talked about this in previous podcasts. Because he was having, some doubts, but the first thing that we said in those initial conversations was like, you can't quit. Like right now is not the time. What you need to do is you've chosen this place and you've chosen this position that you're in. What you need to do is give it 100%, right? Because you don't know yet. You don't know after a month or that. This is the first thing. If your child is complaining a month into college, they don't know. And most kids do, because it's new. It's new. It can be scary. They have to make new friends. They're on their own the first time. So I've had so many moms say, like, even to Christmas break, like a lot of times it's the turning point after they go back from Christmas. So it does take time. So don't listen
That's
to
what
us.
they recommend your child not come home before Thanksgiving break.
A lot of people say, don't let them come home. Yeah, keep them at school. But so we did have that conversation initially. It was, you're here. You got to give it 100%. Leave everything on the table. Put all your, why are you laughing?
I was going to say, so we can play devil's advocate now in the fact that we're through it, because
yes,
that is the right parenting thing to do. Don't you agree? Like, I think that was a very wise choice. And if it were my daughter, I would not be comfortable letting her make that choice so early on, because she just needed more data, basically. You need more
That's right.
experience to know. You haven't had enough to pull from to know if this is the situation. So that was definitely the right move. I think most of us would agree, did well there. But in retrospect, it wasn't that he didn't like college or he was unhappy with himself, or a situation where if he left and went to another school, that problem would follow him. It really literally it was not the right environment for him to thrive in, and he knew that.
Yeah, I think he saw it early on, but you still, I mean, and this is like this in life, you have to give things a chance, because sometimes you enter into a new situation, it's hard, it's difficult, and you think it's not right for you. And that doesn't mean it's not right. It just means you have to push through and get to the other side and figure it out. And that's what my fear was. Well, so that's where we said, like, you have to stick this out.
Yeah, definitely. At that point.
But, and I've talked to him, and I kind of, this is my perspective on life, because there's two ways you can go here. Your kid gets into a situation, whether it's college or whatever it is, and they're unhappy. It's either, well, you're there now, you made the choice, stick it out, you got to make the best of it, right? So, or are you going to do something about it?
That's life.
And that's life.
That's us too.
And it's like, here are your options. Either A, you're going to continue to do what you're doing. If you don't like it, you're going to continue with it. B, you're going
not complain.
And not complain. That's where I was headed. But you're going to make the best of it, and you're not going to complain. Or B, you're going to change it. And if you're going to change it, well, then what's the plan that's in place? What am I going to do about it? What's the better option? And what action am I taking
on the plan?
Right?
I think it comes down to this. I think you have to identify, if it's your child, what is the core issue? Because if it is truly just an environmental issue, you pluck the child out and put him somewhere else and he's going to thrive, versus, or it's a case of insecurities, or he's got a lack, or she has a lack of organization and can't prepare themselves properly for college. Time management. Maybe things aren't going as easy as they pictured it. Maybe it's quite a bit of a jump. That is something that's going to follow them. So if, we get that our children are guilty of it, we do it too. It's just like we're struggling. let's make it stop by leaving and running home. But unfortunately, that's not going to solve the problem. That problem's going to follow you wherever you go until you address the core issue.
Right. That's the other side of it, is like if it's a problem with the way you're handling yourself or handle things that go on in your life, you can change your environment all day long.
Right.
But you didn't fix the problem.
Right.
So it goes back to what we always say, which you're addressing a symptom, but not the cause.
Correct.
And that's what you really have to get into. But listen, back to the college thing. I told my now I've got two now in college. And I've said this to my husband, because if you've been through the college process, and you're about to go through it, man, is it stressful wanting them to get it, hoping they get into the place they want to go, and did they choose the right place for them, and all of these things. At the end of the day, the worst thing that's going to happen is they transfer. Like, people transfer, and we're going through this process right now. Because what we determined with Anthony after a year was that where he landed was not the place for him. He was not happy, and he knew for himself that he had 4 years to get it right. Now 3 now left, because he's already been through a year, and he didn't want to settle for where he was. He wanted to make the most of it. He learned a lot and grew a lot in that first year of school, and realized more of what he wanted to do after college, and had more focus on a career. And he realized this is another thing too, that where he landed did not give him the opportunities he wanted for his career, or the classes he wanted, or even necessarily the right major. So if you're having those, that's a different conversation than like, I'm lonely, or I'm struggling in the classroom, or you know what I mean? Like there's
so
different ways to look at that.
You have to figure out what is the core issue for your child.
Exactly.
And I think there's a lot of pressure put on kids to figure things out sooner than they are ready,
right,
and mature enough to know, because they are, in essence,
they're still babies when they go.
I know, but the money and the time that's I think something college needs a bigger disruption than it's. We got a good one in 4 years ago, when secondary education had to shift and change to adjust. But I think there's something fundamentally, and I think you would agree, like tuitions are skyrocketing, and these kids are coming out and they're 22 years old and have to decide what they're doing for the rest of their life. They don't know themselves. You don't know yourself enough in your 20s to know what's going to light you up, what's going to make you passionate, where you want to spend your time, even where you're talented. I mean, some of the work that we do that you've worked on, whether you've taken the What's Your Purpose quiz or what have you, you could have your child take some of those assessments.
Yeah.
That's great advice, and get some coaching, get some counseling, not necessarily, mental health coaching or counseling, but life coaching around who they are and helping them to know who they're wanting to be.
Absolutely.
Right? Who they're becoming.
Right. Yeah. So that's huge too, because that will help if they have an idea going into school, make it that much easier. But I think the big thing for us was, now that we're in it, I just transferring, to me, if your child ends up transferring or leaving college, I hope that you will not look at it as a fail, is the thing, because it's not.
Did you?
I don't look at it that way at all. No. I mean, we're still not sure where he's going to land yet, but I think that when I look at the situation with him, the easiest thing for him to do would have been to stay put. And that might sound odd, but from my perspective, it's the path of least resistance. He's been there a year. It's a known quantity. He's already made friends, right?
Yeah.
The hardest thing for him to do is say, this is not the right place for me. I'm not going to get the most out of my education here. It's not going to set me up for what I want. I know I can be at somewhere better suited for me, but I've got to go back to square one. I've got to leave all the friends that I've been living with and really love for a year. I've got to make all new friends. I've got to go into a college where people already have their friends.
Yeah.
And make them again. But for him, it was that's a harder path, right?
Yeah.
But it goes back to something that we always talk about, is sometimes the hard way is the right way. I think we want to feel like in life, like the easy way, the path of least resistance is the right way, but that's not always the case. More often than not, the hard path is the right path.
Right.
And it will push you and grow you and help you to become your best self.
A road less traveled too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, here's the one thing that we didn't find out until, so I hope this will help anybody that's listening, that is that if your child is really thinking about transferring and considering it, especially like once they get to maybe Christmas or shortly after the holiday, like I would say if they get back to school after holiday break and they're still talking about needing to be somewhere else, you should start that process then. Because a lot of transfers, if you're going to transfer, they end that transfer process sometimes April or sooner. And so for Anthony, we waited long, and now some of the opportunities he might have had, he doesn't because
that's
transfer's
really
closed.
That's really good advice. And I think if you're still in that, should he or shouldn't he, or should she or shouldn't she type of place, and you're trying to help your child guide them the best that you can, being the parents that you are, you have to decide, you have to take all the information and ask them questions. The best thing that you can do is not feed them the answers, right? As much as we may know the answers, it's so hard to not just tell your child, but the thing we're trying to teach them is how do they have these critical conversations with themselves.
So the best way to do
that exactly is to ask them questions. So what do you think? So what do you think is the cause? If you see something that they're blind to, you could say, well, hey, I have a thought that it's related to this. Give me your thoughts. Like everything should be a question, because again, with a child, if you're going to try to push something on them, they're going to push back. If you really, because the goal is for you to have them receive because you have good advice.
Yeah.
Then you have to package it in such a way that it's going to be received well.
Right.
So that's what and is this the time for a move, or is this just time for a pep talk? Because we have a lot of kids, and you might know it yourself. You might have that sinking feeling that your kid is just maybe needs to foster he needs to just, I hate to say toughen up because that is not where I'm going, but maybe they haven't experienced enough hardship and things are just getting hard and they need to weather it. Okay.
Yes.
Maybe they just need to stick it through. There's a challenge, but the challenge is exactly what as their parent that they need to work through.
Yeah.
Or it could be a pull and run type of situation. You get to help them figure that out too. Is there, a really toxic type of situation set up, whether it's a roommate or, just the child's not equipped to handle the load and it doesn't equate to where they're trying to go in life,
Yeah.
Why go through all of that if they're wanting to do something that's not required? So it's just a series of these, sort of questions and conversations with yourself and with your child.
I think that the lines of communication really have to be open in this scenario. I also think that it's very important to put a lot of stock in listening to your child and hearing what they're saying, because I remember when this was going on with Anthony saying what do you think? You asked him what do you think? What are you going to do? And I'm like, at the end of the day, he's 20 years old. So I can want him to do whatever he wants, but he has to start making decisions. It's his life. It's not mine anymore. Yeah. So to your point, you can come alongside them and help them, but we really have to get to a place where they've got to, not that I left Anthony to the wind. I've been talking to him right along, but also it's not my decision to make. And I really did feel that way. At the start, like I said, those first conversations in the fall were and to his credit, because I said, you've got to make the best of it. Because the worst thing that I think one of the worst things you can do in life is get past a season or whatever, chapter, whatever it is, and think, what if? So I didn't want him to get to the place where what if I just tried a little harder, or stuck it out? Or I said, so you need to just get through this year, give it your all, put 100% of yourself, and know that it wasn't something that you didn't do, right? Figure out the missing pieces, the places where you're unhappy, and do everything that's in your power to make it work. And don't complain about it. Have a good attitude. And if you get to the end of the year and you still feel the same way, then we'll talk.
Yeah.
And to his credit, that's what he did. I watched him work his butt off. I watched him study his butt off. I watched him work his butt off on the field. He's an athlete. And he didn't complain. Maybe once or twice complain about silly things like the weather. but he didn't complain. And almost to the point where I was a little like sideways when he was like, I'm leaving. We were like, whoa. But that's what I'd asked him to do. And when he said that he was leaving, and I think I told you this, my husband had been talking to him, and um there's another thing too there where I was like earlier on, not in the fall, but like in the spring, he and my husband, his dad, were talking, and I let them step back and let them have those conversations, because there's a point too where sometimes the other person, like I didn't want to feel like I was pushing in and adding 2 cents where maybe he was going to get more from his dad at that point. Every situation is different. But when he was pretty sure he was going to make that decision, I got on the phone with him, and we were on the phone for probably, because he was still at school, an hour and a half. And just literally, even though in my mind, I at this point wanted him to transfer too, I thought it was the right decision. But I went through every single argument that anyone could possibly give in the situation he was in of why he should stay. Have you considered this? But what about this? What do you think of this? But what if you did this? And every single argument that I can think of. And he answered every single one. He had thought about it already. He knew what he had to say. There was no like he gave me there was nothing. By the end of that conversation, he had put it all on the table. I knew he had thought through everything. I knew he had weighed all his options. I knew he had looked at every perspective, and he was still landing at this decision.
Yeah, you were comfortable because you knew he was comfortable.
Yeah.
And had thought it through.
It wasn't just like I'm going on a whim, and all the downs and all the pros and all the cons and all this, he had an answer for everything because he had already thought through it.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I was like, okay, he's got to,
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I mean, he's going to switch schools. I mean, it's going to be a blip in his radar. I know it was a big thing for him, and it will be a big thing until he finds out where he's going and meets the people and gets settled.
Yeah.
But it is a blessing to have our kids flex, I guess, with things of this nature that are not life or death and aren't really going to have, it will have an impact on his future. It's not to say it won't, but it's not the type of decision that they could make that could alter their future forever. Right?
It's not a make or break.
It's not a make or break. Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, I think this is kind of a metaphor for life in some ways, though, because I think that we far too often in life just stay where we're at, stay with what we're doing because we're already doing it. It's the path of least resistance. It's the easy thing to do. We might have a little question in our mind if it's the right thing for us, but we just don't take that step because it feels too hard or too tedious or starting over or the what ifs. And we need, we need to stop. In some ways, I'm happy that he realized that and he took the step to make it better for himself.
I love that. I think that it's at the core, what I want to emphasize is just the series of questioning and don't make those decisions lightly and don't make them because you're afraid. So we just had a situation with my daughter that we pushed her to do something, and I'd be the only person in the whole world to do it. I'm not even going to tell you what it is.
I know what it is.
Yes,
I laughed. I made fun of you.
But as her parent, I knew that she was not wanting to do that because she was afraid. So just don't ever let fear of the unknown stop you, I guess.
Yes.
Right? Don't let it be that. Don't let it be a case of, well, I'm going to make a change because ultimately at the heart, you're actually afraid of succeeding in whatever route, or because sometimes we can be as afraid of succeeding as we are of failing.
Yeah.
There's 2 great books on this. If you have, some issues, if you've had this conversation kind of resonates with you, and you in particular resonate with the conversation around having that heart palpitation when it comes to letting your kids fail possibly and branching out and making decisions on their own. The Gift of Failure is a good one. And then also have Failing Forward. And there was a book by...
I'll have to link those. I will link them in the show notes.
Yes. And then we'll have to find the one. She's a pediatrician, and she's written some really good books for moms of boys and then, I want to say, dads of daughters.
Is it?
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. I believe she's written one too. So kind of touching on that topic. And that was really helpful when kids were younger, but it's same principles apply.
Yeah, concepts.
And, maybe grandkids, and you can pass it down to your adult children.
I will say one thing, circling back to Anthony, that I do feel a sense of now is like a real push to like, we have to get it right. Like, you're not going to continue to transfer.
Right.
So like, there's an even bigger like push to, and if you've been through the college, you're going to see like all of this stuff that goes into finding the right college. And Anthony went to school and got settled. Andrew's going this year. So we just are coming off of a year with Anthony, then a year with Andrew, waiting to get accepted, waiting to see where he was going. And I thought, we have a break until we've got to do this with AJ. Nope. We're doing it again in a very small window because it all has to be set in stone. But it's a tricky thing. I hope, if nothing else, we're just anyone who's listening, letting you know, like, it's okay. There's nothing transferring or, falling on your, no, I don't want to say falling on your face, but it's okay.
What?
It's just to normalize it a little more.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, nothing is necessarily normal, but so did you have a little trouble with it where you like kind of bought into that, like, was it like, okay, he's going to go and have these 4 great years, and then when that happened, like, I get the sense that you guys were really taken by surprise and maybe had to like come to terms with not having that, always gonna have 4 years at this place that we had grown to love and adopt. And so some of it was, and it's okay to say, right? It's fair. I think I would feel the same way.
Absolutely.
So some of it is for the moms and dads to get used to that idea too.
That it's okay. And it doesn't mean that your kid's like a failure or didn't, whatever. Like, it's okay. Like, things like that happen and come up, and at the end of the day, what we want is for our kids to be in the right place doing something they love and that they're happy about. And if they're not, it is okay to change that. AJ, on the other hand, and I think parents can fall into this too, AJ is my youngest, he was so angry. I was driving with him in the car one day, and he was like, I'm just going to tell you right now, this is really poor parenting on your part, Mom. I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, you should absolutely not. Anthony got to that school, and he's at that school, and he should be committed to it. And I don't know why you're letting him leave. It's ridiculous. He needs to stay where he is. And he was also worried about the sports piece of it because it's a Division I school. And anyway, come to find out from my husband later that AJ did not actually think it was hard for Anthony and worried that it wasn't that AJ was worried that we were parenting him poorly because Anthony needed to stay put. AJ was worried about how that was going to reflect on him and what he was going to say to the people he knew that his brother was leaving a Division I school to go somewhere else. At the end of the day, he said funny. What am I supposed to tell my friends about him leaving this school?
He was proud of them, and he held
it in high regard. But I'm sharing this because I think as parents we can have a tendency to do that too with whatever it is. Yes. It's what's the story we're going to tell? Or what are people going to think about this? Yeah. I think that's what I was trying to get at when I was saying let's normalize it. Like, it's okay.
Yes.
It's okay because at the end of the day, that status of whatever school they're at or whatever division or whatever it is that they're doing, if it doesn't work out for them, if they're not happy doing it, it's okay. Like, we have to focus on what's best for the kid, not what everyone's going to think or how we feel.
It's so normal, but if at the end of the day, if you're bought into that, that is a shallow place to buy into, right? Because it brings some significance to you, but it's your child's journey.
It may be, but
I mean, that's the rational thing that I can say sitting here in this chair, not having my kid do it. I get it.
And let's be a little gentle using the word shallow, because I think
I don't mean shallow as in vain or I mean it's not rooted.
Yeah,
that's what I meant by shallow. Do you know what I mean? It's you're gonna lose footing on that.
Right. That's exactly. Yes. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, because I think that is something, like, honestly, that nobody would talk about or maybe even see it in themselves. But I think we can do that. We absolutely do that as parents.
Do that.
We want the status. We want our kids to be at the right school. We want to put on the graduation card, he got accepted to la la la. And like, right? I mean, this is the
That's
thing. Like,
real.
if you're feeling that at
That's
all,
real.
and I was using AJ, my son, as the example because he's will wear his emotions and thoughts on his sleeve enough to say, well, hey, what am I supposed to say? Where most of us would just keep that to ourselves.
That's really good because through that conversation, you realized, it is about Anthony and that you are ultimately just wanting him to be where he's going to be, happiest.
Right.
And then it's the balance. So there's always those checks and balances where you just, again, you don't want your kid just pulling up on a whim. You can normalize it to an extent, but it has to be right as long as you come to terms with it. It doesn't matter if somebody else thinks it's a smart decision or a poor decision. It's really what's best for your child, and then you have to own that, accept that, and be okay with it.
Absolutely, because it's not your life, it's theirs, and we should be well past the point of living vicariously through them. So they have to make their own path. We have to support it.
We should be.
We should be. But we're definitely not.
Well, we're moms. We're going to live right. We don't stop mothering, and we're proud of our children, and that's okay too. But
absolutely,
you get where we're going, right? It's just about asking yourself those deeper questions and not just rationalizing or pushing the child to stay somewhere because you like where they're at school. Or
well, that's true too.
Right?
Mm-hmm. What if they went to the college that you went to, and it's your alma mater, and you always, like had that dream, and they're not happy there? Like it has to be, it's got to be about the kid, without also guiding them to make the right decisions.
Jeez, these kids have to come with instruction manuals,
right?
Especially the older they get, right?
I feel like all the podcasts we do on the kids
are the hardest.
We have yes, but we also have so much to say.
We do.
There's just a lot of it.
Yeah, but there's it always comes back to push and pull. It is, and just making sure that you don't veer one way more than the other. And balance is what we've said before. Balance is there's really no such thing. You're never going to achieve balance.
No, or perfection.
Or perfection. No, and you wouldn't want to, right? Because the beauty of life is in the flaws. But if we can walk the line, if we can hover around the line, and that line is that true north for us, right? Right. We have our each individual true norths, but I think we come together on most of that because of our shared values, right? So you're listening to this hopefully because you share some of those same thoughts with us, but know your own true north, and that's our point. Know where your line is so that you can guide your children.
I love it. That's a great place to end.
Yeah. I love it too.
Words of wisdom. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you're following us on all of our feeds, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. The website is www.lifeafterkids.com. Check out the Life After Kids membership community where we're talking about all of these things. And we,
and having
we're having fun doing it. Yes. And thank you for being a part of this journey and for listening today. I hope you have a great day.
Big hugs to you.